And we have also an interesting case about Sweden, which hasn't enforced a quarantine. Well, is it some kind of a blunder from their side, or they just will take care of the situation and move forward? How do you think? Because lots of people are willing to go there because there is no restrictions, no self-isolation or something like that. It's
Well, I think Sweden is very different than much of the world in many ways. And first off, during the cold months, people aren't traveling a whole lot anyway. There's no bound during the cold months. And so that's a little different than what people in the temperate zones are experiencing. Plus, it's a highly educated, they don't have a lot of poor people in Sweden. And it's highly educated, they can probably be trusted. They do have more immigration in the more recent years, but they are, at least a lot of their population can probably be trusted to be smart about how to handle this. A lot of countries probably cannot trust their population that much, frankly. I would say even Americans in that category. At first, but at some point, you have to trust your population. And I think this has been an educational experience so that in America, if you haven't figured out how to protect yourself, then you're hopeless anyway. You should by now know how to protect yourself as best you can. And also on the other hand, one thing I've been tracking here in Malaysia, we do not have as many deaths here proportionately as other countries because we're in the hot zone. We're near the equator. And most of the countries near the equator are not having as bad a situation as they are elsewhere. But that doesn't make us, that does not mean we should be stupid. There was a religious conference around the first part of March. And shortly thereafter, the number of infections in Malaysia blew up. And they traced two-thirds of there were 16,000 people at this place. They were warned they shouldn't be doing this. They did it anyway. And so 2/3 of the infections in Malaysia have been able to be tracked back to that religious conference of 16,000 people. And it included 1,000 foreigners. So we probably exported the disease as well from that religious conference. So even in the hot zone, you can't be stupid. The heat might cause the infection rate to come down, but it isn't clearly from our experience in Singapore and in Malaysia and the other hot zone areas, it's not enough. You have to be careful about what you're doing. So I don't know whether Sweden has made a mistake. I hope they haven't. Because I think right now America's in the same question. At what point do we dare start opening the economy again? And did you see the report out of Stanford? Stanford did an antibodies study in Santa Clara, California. So it's an area that was somewhat infected, but not a real, virally speaking, a hot zone. They had, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the key part was that in their antibody tests in Santa Clara, they found that there were at least 35 times as many people with antibodies as had been reported with infections. So in other words, for every one person that is reported as being infected, there are 35 people not reporting. So that means the death rate is quite low. The death rate by their calculations is somewhere around half of 1%, something like that. It's quite low comparatively. In fact, it may be lower than that actually. Anyway, no more than that anyway. I think it was 1/2.
Just something like that.
Yeah, anyway, it's quite low. It's relatively low, still higher than the flu, but lower, far, far lower, because that means there's, the death rate, there were, in that county, only 70 deaths, and there were 65,000 people not reporting. So basically it was, however you would figure out that would be. So 70 deaths, so it was, if there was a 10% death rate, that'd be 6,500. A 1% would be 6,500. A 0.5% would be, 325. So it's actually, so I think it's 1/2 of 1/10%, something like that is what it figures out to. So it's not a real high death rate, not exceptionally, but nonetheless, if we've had about 20,000 deaths, that means they're also, by their calculations, most people still have not been inoculated. There's not what they call herd immunity yet, anywhere close to it. So while the death rate is much lower than we thought, at the same time, if we totally open it up and people aren't careful, we could still get up to over 100,000 deaths in America. So depending on how careful people are, we can keep that down based on the Stanford report. So I still think we need to open. As I said, the danger of a Great Depression is greater than this, in my opinion. But that's still, so the death rate's low, relatively low compared to what they thought. But still, the total number of deaths could be quite high. Even at that, it could be 100,000 or so anyway. So we need to be careful with what we do. Nobody wants to be responsible for 100,000 deaths. I mean, there's 20,000 now, another 80,000. So we want to prevent that, while at the same time, it actually, if we can protect the older population, the most susceptible population, our greatest benefit would be to achieve herd immunity. And so more people have to be exposed to it in order to do that. So on the one hand, that's one message is we need we need healthy people to be immune, to become immune. Then the whole herd is protected.
Yeah, but there is another more threatening phenomena. Not the pandemic, which is called the infodemic. So that's a matter of a depression or some, just like you said, lie and propaganda, something like that. So, and there is lots of information currently about that. Infodemic is more threatening than any other phenomenon that we face now. And also, about what could you advise to your colleagues from Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Poland, and other countries in regard to scientific research and publications in this time?
Well, I think one out of Stanford I just was citing was out of Stanford. Stanford is one of the most highly esteemed medical research institutes in the world. So you're not going to get higher credibility than you get from Stanford University, or hardly better. So what they're finding out about with this brand new, experimentation they've done, or their measurement of how many people already have developed antibodies, that's really, and how, on the one hand, it shows, that same report shows how infectious it is. In other words, we thought that something like 2,000 people were infected in that county, whereas there's really 65,000 or closer to 70,000 people have already been infected in that county. But most of them didn't even know they were infected. So, that's, or maybe, excuse me, I think that's more like 35,000 at this point. So there's closer to 40 total people, total population infected. well, let me think. I'm thinking two very different ways now. There's 35 times as many people infected as were announced, but then if you extrapolate to the whole county, there would be much more than that. So there's far more. If you extrapolate out, there would be far greater amount that had been infected, and they didn't even know it. They never reported it. They never went to the hospital. So on the one hand, that's the good news, and in a way, that's good news. Except it's also bad news. It means it's even more infectious than we thought, but it's less deadly than we thought, far less deadly than we thought. So the good news and bad news is the two sides of that coin. So that's why I consider the Stanford research that they're just hitting the news right now is probably the most important research we've had so far. Everything else that we've hoped would work out, we have the different types of treatments that they're using, and there's, somebody announces, oh yeah, we have 100% cure rate, but it's only a few people. Those are hard to trust. We need a very large, from what I'm seeing, I have to suspect that it's not none of the treatments so far are as effective as originally claimed. Otherwise, everybody would be undergoing the same treatment. And we're not seeing that. So, now, to some degree, they have failed to adequately conduct some of that research. And so I think they need to, under as scientific a way as they can, without, letting people die in order to be part of the experiment. They need to have a really high number of people under what they think are the best practices of treatment, and be able to give us really firm numbers with high numbers, so that we have high confidence. And I have yet to see anything like that I'm highly confident in. Like I say, we get these small reports of, oh yeah, we had 80 people and they all survived, or maybe one person who came in really infected died and 79 are all healthy. That's great, but then why aren't we hearing that with 1,000 people? We're not hearing that with large numbers. Same thing happened in France. We heard, the small numbers from the highly respected French professor, and now as it extrapolates out, we're not seeing the same results. So that's very disappointing. But that's the sort of research we need. We need to know the treatment. At this point, our best guess is that inoculation is a year away. Our economy won't last a year if we try to save every possible life. Every life is precious. We can't wait a year and not go into a Great Depression. It won't happen. It can't happen. Especially small businesses are all going to go broke. They have to be protected, which is what we're trying to do in America. So the best, the most scientific that shows us some light on what we're doing is this one out of Stanford that I feel good about. Beyond that, we need more extensive testing of treatments to have greater confidence in anything that we're seeing at this point. At least that's my perspective.
Yeah. We'll hope that scientific world would help us greatly. Maybe they need just more time for that. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're active in it for sure, and so that's what I'm also hoping is that before Trump, well, first off, whatever Trump says doesn't matter in a sense. I mean, his is like recommendations. In America, the governors will control how quickly it goes out. And in fact, to another degree, people will control how quickly it comes out, right? Just because you open restaurants doesn't mean people will go to restaurants. Just because you open the parks doesn't mean people will go to the parks. Just because you open the auto body shop doesn't mean people are going to go to the auto body. I mean, whatever businesses you think you're going to open doesn't guarantee you're going to have any customers. And so opening the economy is not as easy as just saying, okay, we're open. It's not that easy. The customers may not come. The governors may not cooperate. So in America, Trump saying we're going to open by May 1st, that is going to be a very tepid, slow process. No matter what he says, it will not happen immediately. Many governors will say, no, 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 we're not ready. Other governors in, Nebraska or someplace will say, yeah, we're ready. We're going to go with it. We're going with it. And they will advise everybody to be careful, protect your elderly, protect anybody with any preconditions that could be at risk. Don't let them leave the house. But people who are in good health, go ahead and wear your mask as much as possible. The companies separate people, keep some distancing within your offices, within your manufacturing plants, whatever you're going to do. My son works for a meat preparation plant. It's not really a packing plant. They prepare meat for people like Subway. Okay? Everybody has to dress up. Everybody's wearing clothing similar to what a doctor, the best dressed doctors, the most protective doctors wear is what everybody has to wear in that meat production plant. Everybody has to do it. Now, even at that, if they walk in, even though they're going to be wearing masks and suits and all, covered from head to toe, if they walk in and they have a temperature, they go home. So that's considered, that's in Utah, in America. So it's considered an essential service. So they haven't had any problems. However, another meat production plant I saw has totally closed down because they were not that careful, apparently. And so they had some infections, so they just had to close down. My son's plant is not closing down. They're handling it right. And so they're putting out a lot of meat for grocery stores and, pre-cooked meat for grocery store and Subway and people like that. And so clearly it's possible to operate as, in some way, there's some way to do it safely. The question is, how do you do it safely? And so I think companies need to have some freedom in making that decision, knowing that if they're not safe, they're going to be shut down. And let's face it, any company that opens up, no matter what Trump says, no matter what the governors say, any company that opens up and is not really, really safe, and suddenly they have some people getting sick, they're closed again like that. Then there's not going to be any option. And they may not be open again for quite a while. And so, to some degree, the free market will tell them, you better as heck be careful in how you're running this operation, or you will destroy yourself. You will destroy yourself by not being careful. And so, to some degree, that's part of the American system. Is give people market incentive to do what's best for themselves and for their customers. And if they don't understand this now regarding this pandemic, when are they going to learn that? So even if the economy opens, that doesn't mean, first off, it's going to open for everybody. Not every business is going to want to open. Not every state is going to want to open. Not every city is going to want to open. Not every customer is going to want to go to them if they're open. So it's going to be a slow rollout. No matter what Trump hopes for, it's going to be a relatively slow rollout, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully everybody will be safe.
Yeah. Well, our goal is to be 100% optimistic, and from the States, I guess it's a matter not to work on the restrictions of the freedoms of citizens as well, and that will be everything good with us. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Ken Harvey.
Thank you.
There was one question I should ask you about the Lingeti project. Just about this, please, because it's related to the multi-language curriculum for educational purposes, like from the relation of the instructional languages to the targeted languages of the educational process. Just prove me wrong.
Yeah, well, that's, we want to teach lots and lots of languages in lots and lots of languages, which is unheard of in the current market. So we want to be a disruptive innovation.
Yeah.
Our goal is to get over to ultimately have more than 1,000 languages taught in more than 1,000 languages. So that is, right now, there's no company offering 100 languages in 100 languages. So that's would be our short-term goal, would be to teach 100 languages in 100 languages. That might be, within the first 3 years anyway. Probably the first thing, since English is the most popular language, some of our first efforts will be to get well over 100, within the first year, 100 languages back and forth from English. So teaching English in 100 languages and teaching all those other languages in English. So that by itself would be quite a feat in 1 year. And nothing anybody else has done. So that would be totally new to the world if we can do that in our first year. But then if you think about it, if you had only 100 languages in 100 languages, and that's all you had, that would be 100 times 100 options. So 100 times 100 is 10,000. You'd be offering 10,000 connections, so to speak, linguistic connections, and that's totally unheard of. So that would be, a short term. Like I say, that might be 2 to 3 years to get all those languages, not only between English and back again, but between each other. So that somebody who speaks Mandarin can learn Russian or Ukrainian or whatever other language. And those languages can learn Mandarin and each other. So they can go back and forth. I would like to start a language institute in Kazakhstan. And I would just, as soon as, within a year, hopefully sooner, but within a year at least. And that would be, I definitely would want to start off with Russian to English, English to Russian, Kazakh to English, English to Kazakh, Kazakh to Russian, Russian to Kazakh, probably Mandarin to Russian and Mandarin to Kazakh and back again. So, try to get those that are most interested in Kazakhstan. Certainly, probably Spanish is quite popular in Kazakhstan for some reason, and I speak Spanish, so I'd probably do Spanish to those languages and back again. So we'll just start building this, but we also want to build classroom curricula, so that's what I'd be doing if I start my own institute. I'd be building the classroom curriculum so students would learn vocabulary and grammar on the internet, and then they come in the classroom with a real live teacher, and they would practice what they learned on the internet. So that's called a flipped curriculum. So we want to set up thousands of language institutes that use the flipped curriculum in that way, so they can and enable countries in the Ukraine, for example, to offer many different languages. And then again, those languages can also learn Ukrainian and so forth and back and forth. So that's our goal. Our founder actually is living in the Ukraine, our originator. And in order to keep his costs down, he's married to a beautiful Ukrainian woman, and they have 2 children. And so he's working there to keep his costs down while we build up our and launch our program. And then anyway, so that's where we're at right now. We hope to launch some courses at least by the 1st of July, and then we'll just build from there.
Wow, that's really great. So promising and truly disruptive, as you pointed.
We're excited about it. It's a very ambitious plan, but we're seeing some very exciting. Our person there in the Ukraine he's an American. His named Lauren. Lauren is doing some great work. He's a great. He's a linguist and an IT professional that makes his living from IT consulting, and so he's supporting his family doing his IT consulting, and while he's spending most of his time building this linguistic website. So He's a genius as far as I'm concerned, and he's doing amazing work. We've had some good recent breakthroughs that will allow us to move ahead very quickly now.
That's great. Great success to you, and I will be checking the developments on the project.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll see you in the Ukraine one of these days, setting up an institute.
Okay,
Okay.
so yeah, we will finish, I guess, and thank you very much, Ken. I really appreciate it, and it's not so short as it was pointed by me initially, so 1 hour, but really interesting opinion, great information. And I also want to say, if you have any people, friends who you know who are facing real cases on the coronavirus, and they, for example, it's doctors or somebody else. So from our side, as we help in publication matters, so we would be uh, we can help to arrange like scientific data from the evidence, from the experiences of these people, and translate, edit, format, and publish in some journal. It's absolutely free. It's just like a social direction within the company to help those who are struggling real cases.
Yeah.
If you
Sounds good.
have
Appreciate
somebody
it.
you know about them,
By the way, like I said, my partner who's working in the Ukraine right now, is just getting over the virus. He was hit with it, and so we're happy he's getting through it okay. But yeah, he had us very worried. He was, but luckily his case was relatively mild, and the rest of the family so far hasn't come down with it. So that he has, like I say, his wife's a little bit younger, and he has two very young children, like 1 and 3, I think. So they're very young children, and they seem to be fine so far. So I worry about them, but now that he's well, I think everything's okay. They probably are immune now. They probably have had it and didn't even notice it. They're probably immune now. So,
that's good.
yeah.
Have you ever been to Ukraine?
No, I haven't. I've wanted to go, and my partner keeps wanting me to come, but so far I've not had that opportunity.
Okay. Soon, whenever it may happen that you may come to Ukraine, just know that you have one more friend like me. I will be
Yeah.
really
Sounds
happy
good.
to meet up anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alex, and we'll talk to you again sometime.
Yes, keep in touch. Thank you very much for all the what you've done for us.
Okay.
Okay, bye. Thank you. Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.